Hey everybody, it's the CC and JT Amateur Hour with the most exciting people in the world. Well, CC.
No, JT.
CC.
JT.
Whatever. It is Sunday, May 19th.
19th.
May
Yes.
19th. Sunday, May 19th. For all that celebrate,
Happy day.
happy day.
Happy Sunday. Happy birthday.
Happy-
If it's your birthday.
Yeah. Anyway, we're back on a regular schedule. Actually, we did Sunday podcast while we were on the road.
We did.
We
But
did.
it didn't feel the same because
Didn't feel the same.
it's always interesting doing a remote podcast.
Yeah. So we're back on a semi-regular basis. We are home.
Yeah.
We're still recovering. Our brains are still a little bit fried. And very quickly, tell your story about your haircut. Just very, very quickly.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I had meant to get my hair cut before the road trip, and things happened and I ran out of energy. So after getting home, taking a day off, I went to get my hair cut yesterday.
Yeah.
Or Friday. Whatever. Anyway, I go in, sit down, and I'm chatting with the stylist as you do. You know, after you talk about how you want the haircut, you start chatting about, oh, what have you been up to? So I explained to the stylist that, you know, I just got back from a 3-week road trip and we were blah, 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 blah. And then, you know, we get to the quiet part where she's basically focusing on cutting my hair. And a stylist next to me has a woman sit down and they start their chit chat, you know, the haircut. The woman's got pictures and she's very organized, and she sits down and they start the what have you been up to portion of the discussion. And the woman says, I just got back from a road trip. 17 days. We went to Tennessee, we went to Georgia, and it's like, oh my God, what were the odds? But apparently this is a very road trip time of the year. Unfortunately, they had a little bit of a rougher road trip than we did. She was talking about constructions and things like that, but they also ended up having a bit of a fender bender.
Yeah.
But the odds of the woman sitting down next to me at the same time we have a fairly small-ish community. It's not like we're in a big city.
60,000, something like that.
Something like that. So it was very funny. I spent the rest of my haircut just kind of listening to her talking about her road trip, going, deja vu.
Deja vu. It's no matter where you go, there you are.
Yes.
So spring is here in Nevada, so we're finally warming up. We're going to have a little bit of low, and then we're going to start that slow climb, you know, to
air conditioner weather.
Yeah, air conditioner weather, which is normal for this time of year. And so we'll be creating and working, and we have several things going on. And so what we're going to do is going to segue into the portion of our usual writers podcast of what we call current projects, current activities. And I got the copy edit back from the editors for the Space Epic, and so I'm working furiously on that. I got some excellent feedback from the beta readers, the awesome beta readers. So I just want to say, tip my hat to all of them. Because they're absolutely right. There are weaknesses that need to be corrected, shored up, so to speak. And we're going to be doing nautical terms today. Shored up. It's due back to the editors a week from this Friday. So I've got some work to do in a relatively small period of time. But the Space Epic is finally coming together, and it's working. And then I had during the trip, I think I mentioned this in the previous podcast, during the trip I had an epiphany about Zoey. And so once I get that out the door, then I'll be working on Zoey. And your current projects are?
Well, the priority for me right now is our road trip book, which we're calling the Bat Book. Our big ass trip book, because JT did some awesome Tumblr posts. And if you haven't seen them, go to our website and check those out, because there are links there. I will be using those as the basis for our road trip book. Basically, it will be a bit of a travelogue. We're going to have a few little highlights of the trip included. Talk a little bit about how we prepared, our final thoughts probably, and then maybe some helpful hints. So we're looking at maybe getting that out later this year.
Yeah, and we're doing it because we want to get into a little bit of nonfiction too. Yep. So it's going to be kind of fun.
It's aside from the woman who was sitting next to me in the salon the other day, a lot of people haven't done this. I had a lot of people comment on my social media posts saying, oh, wow, that's a big thing. And your sister even said that that's something that she couldn't do anymore because of age and health and things like that. So
Yeah, you're right. It isn't.
It
But anyway, so it's something that we heard repeatedly.
yes,
It's
that
something we heard repeatedly during the trip. Boy, I always wanted to do that. I
right,
always wanted to do that. You know what, folks? Do it.
right.
Do it. So, uh,
But it is something that we're going to be working on, and hopefully we will have a book out there later this year so that you can see a little bit more detail about what we did during our big trip.
yeah, and we'll hopefully get some helpful hints and stuff like that. But really, it's going to be mostly for us because we want to put something out there. We want to add to our inventory, our library.
Yes.
And it's going to be fun. It'll be another dual book, and you know, what the heck.
And it will be a little bit different than the last one we did, as you mentioned, because the last one we were writing a character each, but this one is kind of more of our personal thoughts about how the trip went. So we will be doing that, and I'm also going to be working on one of the books that I was doing a little bit of research on during the trip, basically to get kind of the ambiance, the feelings of how this person would have felt going through the experiences that she went through. So I will have possibly 2 books, hopefully done by the end of this year.
Yep. So we're keeping busy.
Yes.
And so so.
And also we are talking about moving forward. We will be updating how we handle our social media, and that may be something we talk about more depth in a future podcast.
Yep.
We're also talking about getting more involved in our local writing community, getting the word out locally about what we're doing. And now that we're both removed from our former day jobs, it's a little easier for us to do that because we were both in jobs that it was probably a little bit tricky to actually go out and promote ourselves as writers while we were doing our day jobs. So we can have the freedom now to figure out how that will fit into this whole new writing process.
So 2024 continues to be something exciting for us. It
Yes.
continues to evolve. It continues to grow, and it's something that we continue to look forward to. We're keeping busy and keeping out of
Very
trouble.
busy.
Well, we're keeping busy anyway. We're keeping busy anyway.
Well, and you know, on top of all of our normal writing related things, and other writers, especially if you're writing full time, you will know that there still are other things that will take time away from your work. So like yesterday I was out working in the garden because during our big trip, of course, weeds everywhere. So there are those tasks around the house, you know, appointments that you have to go to and things like that. So we're finding our comfort zone, our rhythm, our routine. So if you're going through something similar, we feel for you because it's kind of a little bit of a challenge to figure out the sweet spot.
Okay. So that's what we're doing with our current projects.
Yep.
Current projects. And because this is a writer's podcast, blah, 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 obviously not a vocal, you know, lesson on being vocal or anything like that.
Blah, 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 blah.
Blah, 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 blah. So what we're going to talk about in the next segment, we're going to pick up is eventually people are going to get tired of hearing about the trip. You know, in the kind of way, I'm almost tired of hearing about the trip because I like to, you know, live looking forward. And it's not that the trip was bad or anything like that,
right.
But to keep hitting it over and over again is probably, you know, wearying. But
this is also a good lesson for writers in that we get tired of reading the things we write, but once they're written, you have to go through the editing process. So you have to live with it during that. And then moving forward, even once that process is done, you have to promote it. So it is a good lesson that you do have to kind of get over some of those I don't want to talk about this anymore situations and really
as we always say, nobody reads your books more than the people who wrote them, and after a while it's sort of like you just want to okay. But what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about lessons learned from the trip, which I think is valuable for not only for you and me but for everybody. Lessons learned because it was a writer's trip, because we're hoping that it's a tactical writer's trip. Hello IRS, we love you. It may not turn out to be that way, but that's a discussion.
Maybe
for
parts. We'll talk about that more probably later.
Yeah. But we want to talk about lessons learned. I've already talked we've already talked about a couple of lessons. But you know, there were so many things that we did learn from this trip that we could apply to our writing, aside from, you know, doing the travel log thing, writing the book. But there's so many things that we learned from the trip that we're going to be putting in this book. And one of the things we're going to talk about, and so we're going to put this segment in the future podcast. We're going to put this, what did we learn from the big ass trip? And I think we probably talked repeatedly about boots on the ground. We talked about boots on the ground, and that is most obvious.
Before you go any further on that, though, that may be a phrase that some people are not familiar with.
Oh,
So maybe you should explain exactly what you mean by that.
but that means actually going to a place and being there and seeing it and experiencing it firsthand.
Right.
Versus the story that I keep telling is about in Green River, Utah. In Green River, Utah, where I used a hotel for the book. Without knowing that right behind the hotel is this magnificent, beautiful mesa that would have been in the book had I known it was there.
It was incredible.
So it's the mesa story.
Yep.
So we're gonna go. We're gonna do that, but we're gonna do a variation of that. We're gonna do the Snow Squall story.
Yes.
The Snow Squall story. Why don't you go ahead and set us up?
So we were at the Maine Maritime Museum in Bath, Maine, which is not too far from the Bath Iron Works, where they do large military vessels. Warships and things like that. So it is on the Kennebec River. It's a beautiful location. They have a lot of very interesting exhibits, including the Wyoming, which was the largest wooden ship ever built. So we went through and looked at the exhibits. This was part of the reason we went on this research trip, was to get some of this background specifically about Maine, fishing, that type of lifestyle. And we had gone through the main part of the Maritime Museum, which is a beautiful brick building. It's got all kinds of incredible exhibits. You should check it out if you're ever in the area. We went through the outdoor exhibits, and then there were a couple of other locations. They had one building that was specifically geared toward the Bath Iron Works, because since it is a military construction facility, basically you can't tour it, but they had like a little film and things talking about
Propaganda.
that. And then there was another building all by itself, kind of off on the edge of the property.
And there's a reason for that.
So it's a building, and I'd been told that there was an exhibit in there that we should go check out. And it didn't look like, there were not that many people in the museum the day we were there. It was kind of maybe 20-ish or so. So nobody had worked out in that direction yet. And we get to the building, and it's like just a box, basically, with one exhibit inside.
Yeah, and it's about the size of a fast food restaurant.
Yes, yeah, it's not huge, but
it's
it's large, but not huge.
Yeah.
And so, you got glass doors, and you can kind of see what's inside, and it looks like a bit of a shipwreck type of a situation. So we open the doors and walk in, and...
Oh my God. What we found was, and let me bring up the Wikipedia, so I got the name wrong earlier. It's the Snow Squall. And I'm going to read directly from the first paragraph of it from the Wikipedia. Snow Squall was an extreme wooden American clipper ship built in Maine for the China trade. This was in the 1850s. A large part of her bow was preserved and is the sole remaining example of the American-built clipper ships. Now, clipper ships were amazing ships in which they were streamlined, fast, really heavily sailed. And it was just an industry, not only for Maine, but many other ports. But it makes me kind of sad to say that the bow, and it's not much of the bow.
No, I'm maybe a third of the ship. I don't even know if it's that much.
It's not even. I think it's right there.
Yeah, it's not.
I think that piece right there maybe is what's remaining of it.
Yeah, really.
Well, and I'll put this graphic up on the podcast website. But what I found sad is that this is, considering the hundreds of these things that were built, this is the only surviving piece. But what happened to the Sea Squall was that
Snow Squall.
See, I did it again. Snow Squall. What happened to the Snow Squall is it floundered off the Falkland Islands. It floundered and was lost in the Falkland Islands, and it was submerged for over 100 years before, for some reason, and I don't mean, sometimes I don't understand why people do what they do, but they decided to go ahead and recover the bow and whatever remaining pieces, probably because it was the last piece of the clipper ships.
Maybe for historic, trying to do research purposes, probably.
Yeah, and so they transported it from the Falkland Islands, and somehow it ended up at the Maine Maritime Museum in this building here. And remember, it's been submerged for 100 years. And so we open the doors, and oh my God, it smells terrible.
Oh, Now, it smells terrible to us. We
Yeah.
come from an area where it is very dry, so we have a very strong sense of, we can smell when things have been damp. For example, our basement. That's a long story. Go back and look at it. But that smell kind of, I think, is off-putting for us for that reason, is that it was very strongly a smell of long time dampness, but then
It was a lot more to that.
and
Decay,
yeah,
and it was, there's no other way, infested with probably hundreds,
barnacles
if not
and
thousands of miniature sea creatures that corpses were still
decomposing.
into what was left of it. And it was decaying. And, you know, the sad thing and the ironic thing, I'm not sure which is the right word here, is that it was set up well.
Oh yeah, it was a great
Physically,
exhibit.
it was set up well. Had very good displays, you know, explaining the history of the Snow Squall, explaining the history of the clipper ships. Really, if you want to talk about the romantic era of wooden ships, clipper ships wouldn't be a bad thing. Of course, they were just fast cargo ships, but
Right.
But still, when you see this graphic that I'm going to put up on the website, you'll probably be enamored like I am.
And you may be able to, I think we have a photograph that we took in there,
Yeah.
maybe show the piece that we were looking at when we walked in.
But the smell was just overpowering.
Oh,
and,
it was.
and it should stay with the exhibit.
Yes.
Because it is part of the living exhibit, or whatever.
Well, yes.
Yeah, but we couldn't stay like more than 5 minutes. It was
That is called, they're keeping it in a state of arrested decay, basically.
Right.
They're trying to preserve it as much as possible to make sure it doesn't degrade anymore. So they don't really want to do anything like chemical to it or anything that would help with the smell. And honestly, working around it for a long period of time, you probably get used to it.
Yeah.
But like I said, we are from an area of the country where you don't get a lot of those kind of smells. So it's like me being around smokers. Since I grew up with that smell, I don't smell it often anymore, and I'm very sensitive to it. So I think we were both very sensitive to this very pungent, decaying ship.
If we spent 10 minutes inside looking at it, I would be surprised.
Yes, I think it was maybe at the max.
It was just that heavy sea brine.
Briny.
Briny. Oh, briny. Okay. Oh, yeah. Never mind. Married couple.
No, you should explain briny.
Okay, let's stay on topic for a change. Okay, so what are we leading up to here? Well, obviously, we're back to the boots on the ground thing.
Yes.
So if we had examined the 2 pages that I found about the
Snow Squall.
Snow Squall, one on the Maritime Museum's webpage in the Wikipedia, we would not have been even close to grasping that. I want to say extra dimension.
Yes.
So if we'd written this as a passage, we could say either the young man or the young woman, went into the building and was entranced with their imaginings or their imagination of what happened when the ship was flying across the oceans with its cargo and its crew, and we would have missed the fact that the person standing in that room, had they not been used to that smell, yeah.
Well, and there are other things that we would not have seen by just looking at the page, is the fact that it is in a building remote from the main part of the museum. It was almost like they had purposely put it away so that it wouldn't infest anything else. But the doors were facing out toward the Kennebec River. So there's a beautiful view out the doors when you go in and out of that section of the museum. It was even separated from the main museum by the Bath Ironworks building. So there was that little brick building. It almost looks like an office building.
Yeah.
And, just the beautiful greenery and
it doesn't. You're not prepared when you walk in that.
No, that museum is in an absolutely gorgeous spot. It's incredibly beautiful. The Kennebec River is beautiful. It is, like I said before, if you get in the area, you should definitely check it out. So all of those things being there,
hmm
you know, the sunlight on the water,
Yeah,
and
the river is
everything
deep enough and wide enough so
for big ships. Yep.
warships can navigate it. So that sort of gives you the clue.
Yes.
But these are but that extra dimension of the olfactory, the nose thing.
Olfactory. Yes.
You know, we would have missed that completely. And somebody, and if we were to write about that experience, without having done that. And somebody local would be reading that and saying, "Boy, you guys just aren't clueless." They would have been right. They would have been
Well,
correct.
and that's just it. If anybody writes things about Nevada,
Yeah.
you know, we can, especially something about our city, Carson City, if they say a certain thing like this building is located here, it's like, oh, wait, no, it's not.
Yeah.
Or, you know, walking into a casino and what that sounds like and things like that. So locals to the area that you're writing about will know if you haven't been to that area.
So we, of course, obviously, we're going to automatically always going to recommend the Maine Maritime Museum.
Very much so.
It is a beautiful campus. It is humongous, and you know, and I just realized that that was really, you know, even though we went through other parts, like we went through the shops where the you know various parts of the ships were built.
Yes.
There was some odor, there was some smell,
Right.
remaining from you know 150
Yep.
you know, 150 years ago, but it wasn't as overpowering. But going through those shops, you know, our feet made the same sounds against the boards as you know the workers did from 100 some odd years ago. We touched the same tools that they touched. We stood in the same spaces. So there's immersing yourself in the experience to prepare yourself for writing about the experience. There's really no comparison to it if you can. Obviously, you know, bygone days are bygone days. We like you were talking about Lawrence, Kansas, which is going to be, you know, the background for your book. And Lawrence, of course, is, you know, probably almost nothing like it was before.
No.
But we're going to talk probably next week about a place in Nevada.
Yes.
That will help you write about Lawrence.
Yes.
So we'll make that. Well, I'm kind of, you know, hinting
setting us up for next week.
Setting us up for next week. We're going to talk about a place in Nevada.
Yes.
That's going to help her write about a place in Kansas.
Yes.
And that'll be fun.
It will be, and that was one of the surprise parts of our trip. We
Yeah.
had a few locations that we stopped at where it was like we really didn't expect to.
Yeah, that was the
we
first
didn't
day.
even know about it.
Yeah, that was the
And,
first day
yeah.
too. So it was fun. That was fun. It was fun.
Definitely, you know, if you see something that looks intriguing and it's not part of your itinerary, don't be afraid to stop, because sometimes I think we will probably go back to the place in Nevada that we're talking about because both of us were fascinated.
Yeah, well, let's not spoil it too much. Let's save some for next
that's
week,
all I was going to say.
So we're going to talk about Nevada next week.
Yes.
Anything else about the Snow Squall or anything else we want to touch on real quick?
No, just as you were describing us going through the other buildings, I was thinking of one of the other very strong impressions I got was when we were in the building. I don't remember what it was called. It was where they were doing the lumber to, you know, set the framing and everything. But they showed that the workers in there would have worn cleats. So they had the boots with metal spikes in them, not like, you know, golf cleats or anything.
No, lots of spikes.
Spikes so that, you know, they could climb on the logs and everything. And looking down at the floor, because it was an original building, you could see where they had been walking around on these floors, the original wooden floors, and there were holes from the cleats. Yeah. And I stopped in there, and we were the only ones in that building for a short period of time. And I could kind of feel the ghosts of the workers in the building, because there was a slight aroma of time and obviously of wood, because it had been a wood shop. And, you know, things like that are not little nuances that you would add to a story normally, but I think for the purposes of certain stories, if you want to evoke a sense of time and place and how they actually did the job that you're talking about, you could add those little details, like it's not a pristine wooden floor like you might see in an old house.
In other parts of the workshops.
Yes. Some of the floors were in great shape. They were keeping these buildings up really well because they were original to the site, and it really struck me because I looked down and I was like, what the heck? Oh, it's from the cleats. So going there, as you said, boots on the ground, literally,
boots on the ground.
that type of detail just throw in a little mention of it. It doesn't have to be huge, but it can really add some depth to the book.
Okay, so so the snow squall, the smell of the snow squall.
Oh, we'll never forget. It's
The
like you
smell
will
of,
open the door and it just hits you in the face.
yeah. Interesting, fascinating stuff. We're running out of time here. We're running out of things to chat about today on this beautiful Sunday. We really need to get on with our lives. Any last thoughts about anything about writing or about our experience in Maine or anything like that? No.
No, I think our experience in Maine overall, I really enjoyed that part of our trip. And as I said, we will be talking about that more in our book.
Yep.
But otherwise, just trying to get back into the routine. You've kind of already found a bit of a rhythm since you've been retired much longer than I have at this point. I'm coming up on the 2-month point.
Yeah.
And we spent a month of that basically on the road. So I'm still trying to find that rhythm, getting into the writing, doing chores, doing appointments. And I have a couple other commitments that I need to get out of the way. But it's definitely an interesting experience.
Okay, and I have no final thoughts either. So we'll go ahead and let these good people get back to their lives. So you can catch our podcast, you can catch our YouTubes, and you can catch links to the Big Ass Trip by going to our website at www.carsonhume.com, where we have all sorts of goodies and ways to contact us. And if you're one of our frequent followers and you get the email that says that this podcast is posted, or the blog post is posted, please forward that to family and friends. Get the word out, because we really, really, really would want to spread the word. We really want people to buy our books.
It would be helpful so that we can pay some of the bills that we
Okay. And then until next week, keep an eye out on our social media. So until then, sitting over there, Cece.
And over there's JT.
Y'all take care of each other. Thank you very much. And we hope that you have a wonderful, peaceful week. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.